welcome back, everyone. Well, sorry about that. It's a bit of a second go here. Probably add some clips from the bit I did have in that had the sound. I've kind of made a mistake. I have my sound on, but I'm here with Andrew D. Meredith, and we've been talking for a while. Um, yeah, we were talking about books you would recommend because
Yeah.
or authors that inspired you because um, you well uh, books that inspired you because you're an indie author and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah. So, you know, there's certainly times in our lives where a book would not be good for us, maybe when we're younger, but it is in our prime, or vice versa too. I read a lot of Hobb in college, and before that, even David Eddings and Dragonlance. But Hobb was a huge inspiration for me, um, even into early years of my marriage, where I kind of quit fantasy because I didn't feel like there was anything good, and kind
Oh,
of
never make that.
rediscovered
That's a
fantasy.
dangerous assumption, my friend.
Exactly. And I was just too immature to have a good filter for figuring out what I wanted to read. So I kind of quit fantasy and read a whole bunch of other things like Ken Follett and Umberto Eco's Name of the Rose
My friend
was
Amanda is
great.
also a fan of Ken Follett. She's made like
Yeah,
videos of quote from him
yeah.
on her channel. I don't know if you've watched her stuff. Probably
No,
not.
I just finished book three in the Pillars of the Earth in the Kingsbridge series, and I need to go back and read Zero, the Zero book, which is the morning and the evening, and then he just came out with the conclusion of the series, which takes place during Napoleonic Wars. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Um, so I read a lot of like I even finally I'm not a huge horror fan, but I kind of dabbled in horror a little bit, reading like
Well, you like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, so
I
you
do
can't be
I do.
too allergic to it.
No, I'm not completely allergic to it. I much prefer it to be more cerebral. Like, I love The Others as a movie, which is
Oh,
which has got a great reveal at it. And you go back and watch the movie immediately again just to see everything that's hiding inside of it. And so I read it like Matheson's anthology for
is the pink one
no,
the best of Richard Matt? Because I have a
I
friend who
am
just read that.
Legend. The I Am Legend anthology
Oh,
is
okay.
is a great group. I Am Legend alone is half of the entire anthology, and then past that, it's a whole bunch of short stories that are all different kinds of things, from a possessed wooden pygmy doll, like a tiki doll that attacks her when blood gets on its spear, and there's yeah, it's a great anthology. And then I discovered Brandon Sanderson, and he kind of got me back into fantasy and spun me all through the things I was reading when I was working at Fantasy Flight Games as a game developer, and then and beyond that. Um, but more recently, I've discovered a lot of really new artists, authors to me that have been around for a while that absolutely inspire me as a reader, and that would be like PG Woodhouse,
Mm-hmm.
who writes 1940s kind of absurdism, a lot of
I've heard. I know.
hijinks.
I'm a big fan of Hugh Laurie. Apparently,
Yep.
Hugh Laurie is a big fan of his.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They did a whole show. It's four
Um,
seasons
Stephen
of
Fry.
Jeeves and
If I
Wooster.
remember, him and Stephen Fry actually did Jeeves and
Correct.
Wooster.
Yes, and that's a fantastic show to watch. So you're like, I don't want to read these books; they're too highfalutin. Watch the show. The show absolutely hits it on the head. So I had watched all those, and then finally over COVID started listening to the audiobooks of PG Woodhouse, and I do that when I'm editing my books because it tends to elevate my English while I'm editing, and so I can polish my work really well when I have PG Woodhouse in my head versus I can't be listening to Discworld or reading Discworld while I'm writing, because then my characters start to think they're funny and they're not, and so it tends to infect my writing. So I don't do that.
I'm
Um,
kind of the same. Like I read like Joe Abercrombie. I was
right,
reading Joe Abercrombie, and like I was writing my book and A Plague of Nightmares, and it was kind of you know started getting in there. Like wait a
right,
minute.
yeah, exactly.
Like wait a
And
minute.
then I also listened to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell on the way to
Oh,
work,
oh yeah.
and that was before. This is actually before COVID. I listened to it, so I had to get the discs from the library, and there's like 24 discs, and it took me a month and a half to listen to it. And then since then, now audiobooks are easy to access on app through the library. And so there was like a few things I could listen to, and that was one of them. And I was so glad I was able to listen to that, because that book blew me out of the water.
I know I'm gonna read that. I don't know when, but I'm going to. I'm actually going to try a couple of thicker boys this year. I'm gonna try Lonesome Dove. Well, I mean, Gormenghast, I guess it's not really thick, but I'm going to try Gormenghast this year. And my parents kind of went overboard when they got it for me for Christmas, and they gave me the omnibus, so I'm just going to be reading. So I'm hopefully going to be reading... Hold on. Too far. That. So yeah, I'm gonna try and read that and see how it goes, because I've heard like everyone, like basically the like non-Tolkienist people are like, yo, Gormenghast is where it's at. So I'm like, all right. With I'm skeptical, of course, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read Gormenghast, but
I haven't.
Yeah, I try to read things that aren't covered as much on BookTube, because I noticed there's this kind of like, I know you're kind of in the more popular booktuber marks, but there's this kind of like, here's all the books, and there's these particular books that make the rounds, like, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, everybody gets FOMO, and so they jump on.
And First Law and Gentleman Bat, and I have read all of those, and I enjoy all of those, like separate degrees. But I like to cover things that aren't as. I know I'm such an edgelord, but I do things they don't want to do. That type of crap. I don't do that, but it's I've done it. It's
well, then it also you can also comment on all those because you have read them, right?
Yes. And there's also the books that are popular for a reason. I really enjoy Game of Thrones, for instance. I think there's a lot of brilliance in there to be found. Now, I wish George would, finish the damn thing, but beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
As they say. And he's
probably... Or you just be a writer and you write your own book.
And sadly, I've never, I don't think we're ever going to get the end of Game of Thrones, the books.
Yeah. And you see the rounds of who should finish them, and they don't want to finish it either, so...
Looks like we're screwed.
Yep.
No, but oh man, I guess because I've often been asked, what do you look for when you're reading? And to be honest with you, Andrew, as if I haven't been honest this whole time, but to be honest with you, Andrew, it's kind of hard to describe what I look for when I'm reading fantasy, because there's a lot of different kinds, and it's
and that's the huge advantage to fantasy, right? Is that it's such a broad scope that none of us want to read the same of the same of the same.
Yeah. And
we do. There's times in our lives when we do, and we're like, I just need the comfort of reading all of Discworld. It's going to be a lot of same, but also not, right? In the same way that, Sanderson's a lot of same, but it's also not. And which you may like one Sanderson and not like the other one. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Move on.
I've been hesitant to try Sanderson because, I mean, he's popular, and I'm one of those hipsters who's like, I don't wanna, but I also don't. I've said this before, but I don't really love how he makes magic into science.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess it's cool that he's thought that hard about how magic would work, but that it kind of makes it boring for me after a while. Yeah. It's like, oh, what metal do I have to swallow?
Yeah.
I mean, are you a fan of the Sando?
I'm not a diehard, but I've worked to read through the Cosmere. I'm still behind a bit, but I'm not like a book dropped. I got to read it today. I'll get to it. I'll get to it when I'm able to, and I enjoy it for what it is. But I'll, in the same way that I can watch and enjoy and read, but critique Harry Potter.
I enjoy Harry Potter though.
What's
Though
that?
I enjoy Harry Potter though.
Right, and I do too, but I don't have a problem critiquing it because
Oh
I
yeah.
want to talk about what mistakes did she make in her world building? What mistakes did Tolkien? Yes, he did make mistakes in his world building, and
I think his
and
problem was he got too focused on the world building. If you really want to
right,
be like clear,
and he was also in he's also the shoulder upon which we stand, right? And
a
so
lot of
so
us,
there's
yeah, sure.
criticisms you can make of Tolkien and Dune, but the criticisms made from our point of view doesn't mean that they're a criticism that's a reason why you shouldn't read them. They're just critiques of how to do them better now if you're writing something
Yeah,
similar.
I'm not a fan of Dune.
Yeah.
Got now. Luckily, it's not like the Matrix where I've gotten so much flack for saying I don't like the Matrix. It's unbelievable. But yeah, Dune, one of my kind of spicy takes is I'm not a huge fan of Dune.
Sure. Yeah.
I think thematically it's quite brilliant, but like it's just kind of like it's almost like it doesn't know what it wants to be at points when I was
I
reading
can
it.
see that.
But you know,
That's why I really appreciated the new movie. I felt that it captured the heart of Dune without feeling like it needed to be self righteous about itself. So it really kept to the art of the theme of Dune as and some people are like, nope, you got to read the books. It's like, yeah, but we also didn't have to have Tom Bombadil, and we did just fine. So
yeah, no, it's a weird world that we live in.
yeah, and we have a huge advantage as creatives to improve things that maybe we liked, and when we look back or we go back to look at them, we discover they weren't as good as we thought they were.
I would like to
Um,
do like a D&D campaign in the Dune world. That could be
yeah,
fun.
that would be fun.
I'm sure that could be fun. Um, but yeah, aside from that, it didn't really do much for me.
Yeah,
I do like Lord of the Rings was one of my I think like many people was kind of the gateway drug to fantasy
yeah,
as we know it today. Because like I grew up reading because I was a weird kid. I grew up reading like Oliver Twist
hmm,
and like Tom Sawyer when I was a kid. Yeah, it was weird, man. I was those illustrated class. I started
oh
looking at
yeah,
the images and then I like started reading the stories. I'm like, oh, these aren't bad.
yeah, absolutely. I love the illustrated classics. That was my first Jekyll and Hyde was an illustrated classic comic book that I've still got, and it's the weirdest art, experimental art. Um, but it's in my head the definitive version of Jekyll and Hyde because of the imagery that was in that. Um, yeah,
But yeah, no, one of my but yeah, no, I really like Dickens in general, but I just have a deep love for Oliver Twist
hmm,
and a lot of.
that's why I think you're gonna love. That's why you're gonna love Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
I know I've heard her style is very. I read Piranesi in November,
Hmm.
which I enjoyed. I don't
I
know.
still need to read that one.
Have you read that
I
one?
still need to. Still need to.
Oh, I thought
Yeah,
it was very good,
yeah,
but it made me excited to read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
yeah,
So
yeah. You're. I think you're gonna dig it.
yeah,
It's so Victoriana. Yeah,
yeah. I have some friends who enjoy that book a lot, and they're like, and it was like, someday I'll get to it. And then I read Piranesi. I'm like, oh man, I
yep,
can't wait to read.
yep.
Can't wait to
Very.
do.
My understanding is very different.
Oh
Like
yeah, I've heard it's
there are
very.
those who love everything she writes. Period. And there are those who are like, I wanted more Jonathan Strange, and this is what we got. It's okay, I guess. But that's just because they weren't. They were expecting Jonathan Strange. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, no, I've I heard like she got really sick, and
Yeah, and I think also Harry Potter had an effect on her. Um, she wants to write a sequel to Jonathan Strange eventually, and she was writing Jonathan Strange all through '90s, and then it was released around the same time as Harry Potter started coming out. And it's something that all of us creatives go through at some point, and we either have to get over it or embrace it or quit. And that's when we see something that comes out similar to our own stuff, and we think, "Oh man, they took my idea," and it's like they didn't really.
well, I was about to say,
This is something I've faced in the game design industry because I was a board game designer,
oh,
and the board game designer community has still kind of been digging itself out of the mindset of the 80s and 70s where it was if you give your idea up, somebody will steal it, and it's like, no, they won't. They might do something similar. We see it happen in Hollywood all the time, where two movies come out that are identical: Hercules and Hercules, Ants and Bug's Life. They're similar, but they're different. And you as an author, if you spend too much time worrying about your idea being stolen, your ideas never come out. They never get released. And so the best thing you can do is just forge forward and write it your way. And so I think she got frozen up a little bit by that, because of the success of Harry Potter being similar to what she was working on. And so she froze up a little bit, and so she'll get around to it, or she won't. It's a great standalone book. It doesn't need a sequel. I'll read it when it comes out. But
I've heard she's like more gaming-y. I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, so
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
I've said it before, but American Gods is my favorite fantasy novel.
Awesome.
Ever.
Yeah.
And there's, at some point I'm thinking of like making a response to Leanne's The Problem with American Gods, but I'm like, is it worth it? Because like when I'll make videos like that, I'm like, is it really worth it? Because, I get it. I get people are different. Like I get that, and I know it's not always just like a "you're wrong" thing. It's just
sure.
If I want to make something, it's because I really want to make it, and I have to really think the options out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of my prized possessions is I was at a used bookstore, found a hardback of Marvel 1602.
Oh, his I read that a long time ago.
And cracked it open, and right inside on the front page, it's signed by Neil Gaiman.
Oh.
And I grabbed it and walked to the front. And how much is this? I was like, well, it says it's 15, and I bought it immediately before I could acknowledge the fact that it was signed on the inside, and put it out in the car, and then kept shopping. But it was like, what a find to find a pristine version of 1602 signed by Neil Gaiman.
I'll admit, I thought I had a Watchmen copy that was signed by Neil Gaiman, but then I realized it's on all the copies, because it was like one of those shows from.
Yeah.
It was like the making of. It was on the making of spot. I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't write Watchmen at all. I do enjoy Neil Gaiman a lot. I think he's
a bard.
I was about to say, is he the best fantasy writer living today? I would say so, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to be angrily typing in the comments by the time.
Earlier you had asked whether I thought Shakespeare could have written all of his books, all of his stories. And Gaiman's an example of why that could be true.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Gaiman does not write the same thing.
No,
there's a similarity, and there's a style to his voice, and it's like reading old poetry, even from ancient languages. If you know the language, that's who I trust. Someone who knows it so well they can understand when the nuance is different and the voice is different. Mm-hmm. You can notice when a voice is different on somebody. And Gaiman has a voice that it comes through. Shakespeare has a voice that comes through as well. And there's times where you could say, well, there's a few of them we argue whether he wrote it. Okay, got it. Or it was just bastardized through the way that it was passed down from the actors to the written copy. Mm-hmm. But I don't have a doubt that Shakespeare could have written all of Shakespeare, just as Gaiman's written all of Gaiman.
Yeah, no, Gaiman is he's definitely a powerhouse in the genre today.
Yeah.
Hope he puts out another novel at some point, though. I know he's a busy man, so we'll see.
And more importantly, he's a likable guy that everybody knows. He's approachable. He's likable. He's not a jerk, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, I'm like, he seems like such a nice, English gentleman.
Yeah.
He also did a Christmas Carol reading recently.
Yeah, nice.
No, yeah, it's.
I'll have to watch that. I just did a Christmas Carol reading on December 1st that I put on YouTube.
Oh yeah, Mike from Mike's Book Reviews also did that.
Yeah.
Did you give Scrooge a weird voice?
Oh, I do voices for everybody.
Oh, okay. Did you watch the Jim Carrey version of A Christmas Carol?
I haven't. No. My two favorite versions are the Muppet version and the Patrick Stewart version. It's a constant debate on which one's better, and I'm not allowed to say anymore that Patrick Stewart's is better. I think it is, but They're two different animals.
Yeah, George. I like the George C. Scott version, but then again, I
Mhm.
like George C. Scott a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, you know, the Jim Carrey version isn't bad. It's pretty good. Like it once again shows like my God, Jim Carrey is a phenomenal. Um, he's just a phenomenal physical actor.
Absolutely. Yeah, Truman Show will always be on my top 20.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite ones he's done. Aside from like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
Mhm.
and I also enjoy The Mask a lot. I
Yeah.
think he was really good in that. Both as the guy and as the Mask, I think he was
Yep.
good and really. I think he
Nobody
was
else could have
great
done
at
it like
both.
him.
I think he did great at both
Yep.
parts. But yeah, no, it's
And of course, he's my favorite. He's also my favorite Grinch.
yeah. I can't bring myself to say that because I love the '60s cartoon so much,
Mhm.
the Chuck Jones one. But he
Yeah.
he did a good job. He
Yeah.
did good. He's good. Yeah, though I'm more of a Robin Williams fan in terms of like
Oh
those
yeah.
kind of zany comedians.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, the original Genie over new Genie every time.
Oh yeah, he's
Yep.
fantastic. He's so good. I really I do enjoy. I mean I'm more of a Beauty and the Beast guy because Gaston's a freaking amazing villain, but also he has the greatest hype song in all of Disney.
Mhm.
Disney, at least in my opinion, he does. So yeah, it's hard for me. It's good. It's very good. Um, yeah, one of my favorite. Uh, I lost track there. But yes. I saw you commented on one of my videos the other day.
Mhm.
Um, I thought I'd bring this up. It was
Yeah.
I was it was I when I put it up I was like crap. I really need to put this up. Oh well, I did it anyway.
Yeah.
And you posted a very eloquent comment. I thought my friend Amanda thought it was hilarious. Your comment. And let me just find it real quick. Got notifications because I put up a new video. Because I mean, I wanted to talk about this with you because you're an indie
Yeah.
author, and I've been kind of grappling with this recently because not necessarily drama per se, but there's
Mhm.
just been a lot of debate going on about self pub and trad pub, and yeah, I mean, I really don't care. I think anyone can write a great book, and also self pub's been blowing up recently, so I think it's
Yeah.
something we should consider. Um, and let me just find your comment real quick, cause I'm losing my mind here. Um, uh, let's see. Um, I particularly like this one. They're just a hilariously farcical marginalia in illuminated manuscript of demons blowing trumpets with their butts. Yeah, my friend got a real kick out of
Yeah.
that. Because one of my big gripes about like criticism I've seen on YouTube is that there's just people who again, I know this is kind of a subjective thing, but they basically just like dislike movies because they just to go against it. It's not really that they didn't like it. Or at
Right.
least
Yeah.
that's my perception anyway. I could be wrong. They may not really like these films, but I've noticed this kind of movement of people who do this, and I'm just
Mhm.
kind of tired of it.
Yeah. Those. I mean, those are the trolls that I was referring to. Right. It's like Anton Ego in Ratatouille.
Uh
Right. And he's got a awesome arc over the course of that movie. Right.
huh. Yeah,
That
that's
that
that's
the rat's just trying to make a living, and it's in the end, what does Anton Ego says, like, in the end, not everybody can cook, but it's the same thing. There's a difference between nope, no, nobody can cook, period, and well, it doesn't mean somebody should cook, because there are some people who probably shouldn't ever touch a pan. And so that's what his conclusion was that both he and Gusteau were correct,
mm,
and that Gusteau was saying anybody can cook, not that everybody can cook, but you can. If you really put your mind to it, you can learn to cook. and Anton Ego kind of was reductionist in saying, nope, he's wrong, nobody can cook. And it's like, I mean, that's a bit
I will remember. I remember seeing Ratatouille in the theater, and I just didn't really get it because I was a kid when I watched it. It was with my grandmother.
Yeah, you're an adult now. You should watch it now.
I was like,
that's a good deep
what?
Cut.
This guy with the, is that even possible? It's just like,
no, totally not. It's a cartoon, but
no, I mean like when he pulls his hair and controls him. I'm like,
yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, it's a cartoon. But nor can anybody be as large as Gusteau is and walk around. But anyway, it's a comedy, right? And so I've always looked at that like Alfredo, the chef, he just doesn't respond to bad criticism, and that's the best that we can do. Is if there's bad criticism, we let it roll off our backs because it's not our problem to deal with.
I get that, but I just find it frustrating because it's not because it like personally offends me, though I'm talking about it, so I guess it kind of does.
Sure,
but it just feels disingenuous to me. Now, I mean, there are the more like harder and critical YouTubers, like my friend Jason or you know my friend Amanda. That's fine. Like I'm not talking about them. I'm just saying like the people who just do it just to like go against the grain. Like I just don't find that impressive.
No, and that's when I had a video I had that I was just commenting on what should an author do when they get a bad review, and it's part of growing up and getting mature, of understanding what the difference is between a bad review and a bad review, right? Poor review. Low stars does not mean bad review because it's low stars, and in fact, a low star review can actually be beneficial to an author's readership. Because one bad review prevents other bad reviews from showing up, because it says, here are problems that I had with this book, and it had X, Y, and Z problem. Other people who were like, yep, those are triggering, I hate those, I guess I shouldn't read that book. That person who read that review is never going to review it, so that means no more bad stars for that reason. Other people who are going to read X, Y, Z and go, oh, I love Z, I'm going to read that book. So it's a benefit, right? Because in the end, reviewers, critics, however you stand and call yourself, reviewers and critics, it doesn't matter how they review as long as they're consistent. I know people who will never give a 5-star review. They only give 4s, maybe 3s. Maybe they have no 2s and 1s. Why? Because they're not going to bother to finish a book they hate. Right? Others prefer a painful book and they'll go through a 2 and 1 so that they can do a write-up. Good for them. That different strokes for different folks. It's all about consistency, because
I'm one of those guys. I think it's an educational experience. I mean, I guess I'm not technically a writer. I mean, that's probably there's no true Scotsman, whatever. I don't care, but I'm probably not really a true writer or whatever. I think it can be educational to talk about bad writing, at least and bad writing, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and people who identify with you and they like your reviews and start to realize that you have the same likes and dislikes as them, you then build trust with those readers, right? Because then they're going to go and say, hey, what's Britton reading? He's reading this and this and this. Oh, I should read those too, because I've always been thinking about it. But if he says it's good, I should read it. In the same way that reviews are for the author as well, especially for the indie author. And there is a difference. Okay, so breaking this down, like a trad author.
I was going to ask if you think there is a difference, because some of the criticisms I've seen kind of running around about indie, or not really. God, I don't know how to talk about this.
Well, so let me say this: we have to look at the whole picture.
Okay.
Of the industry, right? That the trad publishing puts books into bookstores, and it is a known fact that they buy the top books. The New York Times bestselling list is rarely gotten on by accident. It's usually a giant who knew it was going to happen, and suddenly a book shows up and everybody's like, what, where did this come from? Because it showed up because of its quality. Most of the New York Times bestselling sellers list is purchased by the publishers through hijinks of they'll work with the bookstores and say, we're going to send you 100,000 copies, and then we promise we'll take them back after a month. Oh, look, it's on the New York Times bestseller. How did that happen? He sold 100,000 copies because they bought their own placement. Okay, it's all that's just marketing. It's the way things have been for all time. So you got those. Who are writing the reviews when a book is released by a huge publisher like Tor? People that Tor trust to write a good review to make sure it looks good so that it will go on to the best-selling list. So there's a lot of
Seems
those
a little
moving parts.
disingenuous.
It is. It is, but it's also how the masses read, right? Like if you take like someone like James Patterson, why do you read James Patterson? Because you like James Patterson because James Patterson. Doesn't mean he's a great book. It's just you just know what you're expecting. Why is romance a huge genre? Because those who like to read it want to read more of the same. So because of that, more begets more. So for the mass of books that do really well, it's because more is more, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the case of those reviews, traditional authors don't get their information from reviews. They get it from their agent and their editor who have curated from those reviews what the author needs to improve or fix or continue to do. So they're told by the industry how to better be themselves, not necessarily better, but better version of themselves and keep doing their thing. An entrepreneur, an indie, whether that is music, comics, would be a great example of that. I mean, you look at Art Spiegelman, you look at all of the old independent.
Before Image and Dark Horse showed up.
Right. Before all that, all of them were doing their own thing because they could and because they were iconoclasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the comic industry. The music industry had a whole indie phase that they went through, where indie music from the 90s through till now, it was all about the small shows. But the money's going directly into the artist's pocket. It's going to the bars that they're playing too, but it's not just going to the concert agency, right? So every industry that has an indie phase or an indie group has to figure out how best to find their niche. And indie authors don't have publishers and agents to tell them or not tell them what's being said about them. Like they could have some really poor reviews coming in, and do they tell them or do they nicely say, let's sort of fix? No, don't look. Let's fix these things that we should do. I don't want you to break your stride because you need to make us more money because it's a nest egg thing. Mm-hmm. How can the agent and the editor get more money out of the author? In the case of indie, we have reviews, and we can actually sometimes respond positively and interact with them. And those of us who are good at responding to reviews and being personable with our readers will do better than those that react badly to a review, right? But that's true of everything. You know, if someone ticks you off at work and you send an email to the president, things are not going to go well for your career.
Probably going to get fired.
Exactly, because you went over somebody's head. You were immature. Every human being on earth has to mature in some way or another. I've had times when I've done things like that, where I've emailed a president over somebody's head and it got me in trouble. It was stupid. I was a kid. I learned from that. And so that's where the reviews help authors, even trad who can go looking at reviews, to improve, because that's what we're doing. We're artists, and artists are always looking to improve their craft in one way or another. So yeah. So that's the big picture, is that there's a disingenuousness to how the traditional publishing works, and indie is different in that sense because they are kind of bypassing that and going around the elbow to figure out a better way to do things. And because of that, trad is then looking at indie and starting to snipe people out of indie because they're realizing there's new voices that are not being discovered by the machine that creates authors.
Well, I guess this goes into kind of another conversation I've been having about if authors should be in reviewer spaces. I know this is something that's kind of been, I guess debated on. I mean, when I think of BookTube, it's one of the things I like about BookTube is that mostly everyone gets along,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's everyone kind of everyone's pretty nice to each other, and we get along. And but I have noticed some, like, I don't know if I want to say arguments, but disagreements about
Hmm.
certain things, like if authors should be in reviewer spaces. I thought that was really interesting because
I think it depends on the maturity of the author. We all have, like I said, we all have things to learn, right? And so readers and authors are trying to contribute to each other. Readers would like more good books, and so their reviews help to improve um, authors. You look at like cooking. If you and a couple of friends said we're going to learn to make bread together, okay,
okay.
let's assume you both decided, you all three decided we're going to start making bread together, and once a month we're going to bring our bread and we're going to break bread together and taste each other's bread. If one of you makes really garbage bread and you don't say something, they're going to keep bringing garbage bread. But if you tell them, let's talk, there's some issues with this bread. Here is how you can improve it, because I don't want to eat garbage bread. I would like to eat good bread. Let's make you better. That's a benefit, because you've now criticized each other's books, or the bread in this case, so that you can improve your bread. The friend who reacts poorly to that response, well, fine, I just won't ever make bread again anyway. You kind of go, well, at least I don't have to eat crappy bread anymore. Or you say, no, 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 dude, chill out. I'm not saying you should stop making bread. I'm saying let's fix this. That has been a huge advantage to the writing community as a whole, the writing and reading community as a whole over the last 3 years, is that if you go back 3-4 years, the community was, you dox somebody because they said something stupid. You tear them out of the community and rip them a new one on Twitter. That doesn't happen as much as I've seen anymore. It's much more of iron sharpening iron, of someone saying, dude, that was a really immature thing for you to do. You need to fix that. And like, oh, I'm sorry, don't kick me out. I'm not kicking you out. I'm saying make better bread. So there, and there's going to be immature people who are going to respond badly. But if authors can improve each other by having writing groups, are the critic groups saying, hey man, let's discuss how you, and I don't know, because I'm not in those circles, but is there an ironing sharpening iron inside the criticism and reviewer groups as well, saying, here's how we should do this, let's talk about this, let's improve this so that we can all get better at it. Because no one's above reproach, right?
Yeah.
Authors who have a poor book need to improve or walk away, just as people who are reviewing can improve their reviews by the simple fact of doing more of them and seeing how people respond to them and who's their audience, because they do have an audience too. Every reviewer has an audience. We all have audiences, whether it's our own family or whatever we're creating as an artist, and reviews can be an art just as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's definitely people like Siskel and Ebert who I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know they did movies, but they really they really showed how you could discuss art. You know.
Right. And sometimes they were very wrong.
Yeah.
There were times they had to eat crow. They made mistakes sometimes when you look back and say, well, how could they have ever hated that movie? It's now everybody's loved movie, and they've admitted, yeah, I love that movie too. I was just in a bad mood that day. Like,
Yeah.
we're all in a bad mood at some point.
Yeah, no, like or Harold Bloom is a good
Mm-hmm.
one for books. I don't know if you've ever read Harold Bloom, but he
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of, I wouldn't call him like, he was the Gene Siskel of book reviews for a very long,
Yeah.
because they both had a similar approach. They were both more like, Ebert was more the, like, down to earth guy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you've
Yeah.
seen Siskel and Ebert, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
like Ebert was the more down to earth guy. Siskel was the more like analytical,
Right.
the harder one. And that's kind of who Harold Bloom was. And
Mm-hmm.
even he, he criticized Stephen King in a manner I thought was completely missing the point of why Stephen King is good. And he was also
Yeah.
making the mistake that his predecessors did with people like Dickens and Shakespeare. Now, I'm
Right.
not saying that King is like Dickens and Shakespeare, but I'm just saying that, they were ignored too during their lifetime. Like, oh, they were just popular. They'll probably die out.
Right.
Who got the last laugh? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So that's kind of my. I mean, when I critique things, I try to be as fair as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I mean, The Devil Takes You Home. I don't like that book, but hey, Gabino Iglesias might get the last laugh on me once I'm gone.
Yep.
His book might last, and I'm just gonna be like, I'll be completely baffled, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a couple of days ago. I forget who said this, but they were like, "There's 7 billion people in the world. If one person treats you rudely, they're doing you a service. They're telling you that of the 7 billion people in the world, you can now ignore that one and turn to the other 6,999,999 people to spend your time on and find somebody who you're going to have a better experience with." So we don't need to be immature and react to someone who doesn't like what we do, because that's fine. That means, great, let's move on. We both get to move our separate ways and find other people who we have better circles with.
Yeah, I mean, I've also had disagreements with some friends of mine about about indie and trad publishing, because I'm that kind of guy. Do I think there are differences between indie and trad publishing? Yes, I'll just say yes. I mean, I know it's a complicated issue, and I know there's people who will get defensive about it.
I don't.
And I mean, I'm not talking about you, but I'm just
No,
I know
no.
there's certain
I
people
understand.
who might get defensive about that.
Yep.
And I mean, I think there is, but I don't think that necessarily means that one is inherently superior to the other. If that makes sense, I don't know.
Right.
Does that?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can. So like there. I personally put a difference between self-pub and indie, because I kind of use self-pub as a derogatory term, in the sense of someone maybe who, well, that book's kind of self-pub because it has that feel of is it really trying, or does it feel like it was done at a vanity press, which somehow they still exist. I keep finding these vanity presses that exist. And so I suppose I could stop using the term self-pub and say that's kind of vanity press looking, because that says something. That says, are you even trying? Because there's kind of no more excuse anymore. It's very easy to make a good looking book. There's, even with just using the tools that are available on the printers, you can make a good looking book. Find a good cover, you can make a good looking book. It's not difficult. Same happens in trad. You might have authors who are saying to you, like, you know what, your book's kind of commercial. And to someone like James Patterson, he's like, good, sign me up. Here's my wallet. Put some money into it. He's going for commercial.
Yeah, he's
great.
He's laughing all the way to the bank too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hopefully investing it well enough that if tomorrow he was done, he's doing fine, right? So, of course, absolutely, in both industries, there's poor quality, right? That's going to happen. And admittedly, indie is up against 30 years of hate, because we had all the 80s and 90s of vanity presses. Then another 10 years until 2010 that was still kind of vanity pressy. And then the ebook craze exploded, and it changed the financial shift. Now, it didn't mean that the books got better. It just means it was easier to publish, right? And so there's always growth. There's always growth, in the same way that, if you don't have the money, big publishing, of course you can't do X until things get easier. And they have been getting easier as they go. So, the most that we can do is continue to improve. And every generation, every 10 years, we have to refigure. Every new group has to figure it out. It isn't like, well, all indies before have done improvement, so I'm already going to be great. No, you're not. You got a lot to learn, honey. We all got to figure out what we got to do that's going to improve our art, because it is an art. And maybe that's improving it because we have a better medium to use, a better, more expensive paints, whether that's a degree in something, or whether it's because you put the time in. I put in a master's degree amount of podcasts and listening and learning before I tackled my books, after I kind of quit after 2010. So I spent 10 years relearning everything because I knew I'd done something wrong before I could write a book that I was proud of and can look back and go, man, I wrote garbage in 2010. But I couldn't have learned that if I hadn't have faced the music myself and tried to improve.
Yeah, no, it kind of, it's just, I mean, one of the things that me and my friend were kind of debating about was like, it was kind of, because like my issue, like if one is inherently better than the other, it just feels kind of like a not true Scotsman fallacy, where it's just like,
right.
You're literally just making generalizations. It's
right.
not really, you're not. It's not really. I'm just like, I'm like, those people could be wrong. I'm not saying that
right.
they're right. I'm not saying that
and
they
we
are
all make
wrong.
generalizations to kind of protect ourselves or to give us the permission to move on. Like the number one biggest argument against indie is, well, it's not edited. And it's like, you know what else isn't? Philippa Gregory. My wife will not read another Philippa Gregory book because it's so poorly edited, because it appears they don't edit.
The historical fiction author lady?
Yeah.
Isn't that
She
the lady
writes
who did the Tudors?
No, that's Alison Weir.
Oh.
So my wife switched to Alison Weir, who writes biographies, and even her fiction is written at that high level of biographical writing. But Philippa Gregory, it appears she's so big that when she turns a book in, they publish it. It's like, but was it edited? They don't care because people will buy it. Whereas, so different strokes. Again, Alison Weir has a very specific level of editing. She's probably paying her own editors before she turns it in, so that if it gets to the publisher and they don't edit it, she's done her due diligence. Philippa Gregory is like, here's a book, it's done. And so you get a book in, and there's poor editing in a trad published book. There's plenty of books like that. I mean, you look at
well, that's the thing. I don't. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't. Books. God, this is so tough to talk about. I'm sorry. It's like, I've read trad books that are awful.
Yeah.
And not just like, because I'm terrible at paying attention. Like, I mean, yeah, I'll see like a typo or a.
Sure.
I mean, I'll see like a typo, or I'll see, I'll see like a thing, I'll see like a, like some grammatical error. I'm like, those happen. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah, they don't bother me.
I'm not a nitpick. I'm not that kind of writer. I'm not, I don't do that. But like, there is some genuinely like trite, like cliched, off the, just, stuff that bothers me personally.
Yep. And
I'm like, so you can't just say that, indie is this thing, and it's just...
It's not a monolith. And neither is trad, right?
I apologize. I'm probably just spitting word salad right now.
No, you're doing great.
I appreciate that you think that.
Neither is a monolith.
I appreciate you think that.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. And like, she's all like, oh, these indie authors shouldn't be giving writing advice, one of my friends said. And I'm like, why?
So my question would be, then who should?
Well, yeah, that was kind of, I mean, I wasn't asking that, but I'm just like,
right.
My point was, look, you don't have to like the fact that it's, indie, or, it might not be edited to the quality of a trad. They put a book out, it's published, they're an author. Right.
Yeah,
that's kind of my beef with.
Here's another thing too, is like, if you've written a book, you've written one book, and you're pitching it to agents and editors, they get how many books a day, right? Dozens, hundreds. Each agent gets hundreds of books a day, and they have to filter through. The chances of them responding, nevertheless sending an auto not interested goodbye, if they actually respond to give you feedback to your book, is infinitesimal. The chances of getting actual feedback from an agent is infinitesimal. If they give you advice, it's because they saw something and they want you to come back. But few people ever get responses back from those agents. Nevertheless, editors pass that, right? An indie author, yes, the first book most indie authors put out, Maybe they haven't discovered the community yet. They don't have other authors around them, because neither do the trad authors. A lot of them are islands as well. So the act of desiring hard to work alongside other authors to improve ourselves, because everybody assumes that we're writing tripe, gives us a bit of an advantage, because we're constantly adapting and learning new things in order to improve our writing, because that's the only way we can do it. Outside of getting an education, of which just because you have an education doesn't mean you can write. You got to actually write to learn to write. It's the only way to do it. You can think about writing all you want until you write. I have so many friends who are like, I think I want to start writing. I was okay, so start writing. Yeah, but do I need to learn a whole bunch of stuff? No, you don't. Back in the 90s when we played video games, we had to earn our own way through a game by actually beating it, not by looking up online how to win. And it's the same with writing.
Yeah.
You got to read the book. You got to write the book and read the books. Write the books and read the books. And that's how you're going to improve. But I'm not getting feedback from when I send to agents. So find other authors who will improve, who will help you improve because they want to improve. Somebody who is going after the same goal as you are, and you're going to improve. So I would say, I mean, that's why we can give writing advice, because we're doing it, right? We're not just publishing books, we're writing books.
Yeah, that was kind of the point I was trying to make, was like, they're doing it. Like, sure, they might not be like, Stephen King. They might not ever get to that level.
And some of us, not myself, some of us don't want to make a living at it. I do. But I also don't need to make a whole lot of money. I know authors, indie authors who are like, I'm writing for fun. I'm a doctor. I'm never going to make doctor money. So why would I quit my job unless I'm making doctor money? I was like, yeah, but I don't need doctor money. So I am spending so they're going to spend their free time writing because it's fun, just to have a creative outlet while they're being a doctor. I and other authors who are saying, no, it's going to take time, but we would like to actually make a living at this, and we can. What'll it take? And indie authors, the studies are showing that a successful indie author makes a lot more than the vast majority of trad authors.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my friend's contention, is that, like, it's like her point was that she doesn't think the risk is worth the reward. And I'm like, okay, that, I mean, I won't take that from her. That's her opinion, whatever. But, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that black and white, but, I'm not.
Well, I mean, I guess what did they mean by risk? Because, like, if I spent 3 years in the query trenches, did I risk and then failed? Or did I learn from the hard knocks and then choose to do something else? I mean,
well, I mean, when you're an indie author,
right?
At least from what I've heard, I haven't done it yet, or I haven't tried,
right?
But you do most of it yourself. You pay a stupid amount of money, and then you put it out there, and you might not get the numbers that you want. Now, I know that again, we're in a changing. I know that indie has become more popular since we're on BookTube now.
Yeah, you won't get money from that first book, unless you win the lottery. And every successful author, trad or indie, who is super successful, won a lottery. Sanderson will tell you he won the lottery. His lottery was he was online to be a successful mid-list author. He'd do all right. He'd have a living. He could write for the rest of his life. But it wasn't going to be a $14 million Kickstarter. He won the lottery when he was tapped to finish Wheel of Time. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter whether you like how he finished the Wheel of Time or not. He was given 3 books to write that were going to be billion-dollar, millions of dollars, right? And so because of that, people were like, oh, who's this Brandon Sanderson? And everybody read his books, and so he took off running, right? And so he won the lottery. I've always equated it to every author, no matter who they are, they don't know where the finish line is, and they don't know how long a race they're running is, and they don't know when they're starting. But we're all running a race. It may be that I'm going to only have to run a 100-yard dash before I win, and suddenly I'm successful. Others don't know that they're running a marathon in the dark. And you don't know if you got planted in the middle of the race while everybody else is running, because we're all running our own race. We're all starting at different times. And we'll all get there when we get there. So all we can do is keep writing because we enjoy the creation of story.
Well, yeah, and like my thing is, it's again, indie has grown into such a I know we're on BookTube, and so it might make it seem like it's big, but like from my perspective, I'll just say this: it looks like indie is starting to gain some traction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may have opinions on that. There may be people being like, "Oh, it's just booktube or whatever." I mean, but from what it looks like to me, it looks like it's starting to kind of, we're seeing like indie authors like, didn't Josiah Bancroft start as an indie author? I'm not
Yeah, I
entirely
think
sure.
so. Yeah.
And like Michael Fletcher,
Yep. Yep.
it's not,
Yep. Yeah. There are a ton of trad authors who have said if I could do it again, I would go indie or hybrid. So hybrid would be that you have an agent and you're doing trad, but you also have another series that you're publishing on your own. Brian McClellan proved that it could be done really well. He had his Powder Mage trilogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he told his agents, so I'm going to start writing novellas and releasing it on my own. And I want you to tell the publisher I'm doing it. Don't ask them, just tell them. So he wrote a novella, and the first novella he put out, he sold direct to his mailing list and had 40,000 sales on release day. Direct to his own pocket. Doesn't matter if he was charging 99 cents. That's free money that he was not going to see with his novels, which you might get that as a signing bonus. But then, so he wrote 3 more of them.
Well, don't you think he has kind of an advantage because he already was doing trad?
Yes. Yeah. So that's an example where hybrid works.
Oh, okay.
He's basically saying, I'm not just relying on whether I can get a new contract or whether my book gets orphaned because an editor gets fired from Tor. I'm going to write my own books as well. Sanderson went hybrid by doing a $14 million Kickstarter for 4 books that he wrote on his own, because he's like, I'm not even going to sell these to Tor. And then Tor's like, but can we please have them? You made a lot of money. We want the money too. And he's like, okay, fine. You can do the paperbacks. So he's now he hybrided everything he did at the Kickstarter to immediately release them as paperbacks as well. That's a huge success. Now, there are those who would say, well, because Sanderson did it doesn't mean anybody else can make 14 million. Guess what? I don't need to make 14 million. The fact is, I've seen what Sanderson did, and that even if a slice of that pie can be replicated, that's living.
Also, Daniel Green, yeah, I
completely
forgot about Daniel Green.
He leveraged the fact that he had a huge following on YouTube, wrote a book, put it out, and they all bought it. Great. Good for him. He did something. He's an entrepreneur. It's very not .com boom, but like the new think tank model in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's what the indie industry is like, is a think tank of every one of them is a different entrepreneur, but we're all in this together because we're all in the same think tank, kind of hyping each other up and saying, no, stop it. Let's work on your pitch. Here's a book that's just like mine. You guys should read this too. And then it generates things. And then now we have authors from trad like Janie Wirtz, who's was kind of rediscovered by BookTube. And now she's like, yep, I'm happy to have new readers. And so she's a trad author who's been writing for 30, 40 years, who has kind of been adopted by the BookTube community and had a whole new kind of new lease on life for her books because of that. So, I mean, in the end, the fact that we all get to read more books is a huge advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on my I said this earlier. Poor James Patterson. I'm just picking on him today. But I'm like, okay. I'm like, you can't just say that trad is better than the. Cause like, look at James Patterson. Like,
yeah,
he's not that good.
We
at least I don't think he's that good.
Another huge advantage is the fact that we get to be more experimental.
Yeah, I've had friends who've said that who have self-published.
Philip Chase had this book with an agent pitching to publishers, and none of them were picking it up. So he said at the beginning of the year, I'm going to go ahead and publish them myself. And the agent said, I understand. And he put out 3 books in a year. And this is, and
you read it. At least on
right,
BookTube.
Exactly.
I should give that the Piviat on BookTube at least.
Right. and so he's got that new niche. It could very well be that because of this, a publisher's going to pick him up and go, wow, he did really well. I actually want that now. It's like, thanks for the show of trust 3 years ago, but I'd still probably take the deal because great. Know. Now it means more readers. It means more readership.
That's true.
And it also entirely depends on what, like, I would sell Thrice, but I wouldn't sell Collation because I have a vested interest in that story and I want to have full control, creative control over that. But Thrice is something that I would sell to a publisher because I'm okay to give up a little creative control with that. The fact that Chase was writing the book for the publishing industry, he's probably willing to give up that creative control if they come in with a big check. Because we are in this as a business. All artists are, whether they admit it or not, are in it to make a living, because nobody wants to work a schlub job when they can be doing art if they're an artist. If we're an artist, we want to do the art. And doesn't mean we have to make a lot. In fact, it can be going through a couple decades of hard knocks and learning to live on a lot less money to realize, boy, you can do really well on very little as an author. I have a guy I met here in Colorado who he's a very successful independent author. He's written like 60 books, and
Damn.
COVID happened. Yeah. So he's putting out a lot of books. It's making money. He's selling them. Good for him. COVID happened, and his wife and him said, boy, we can live on a lot less. And so he quit his job. And so now he's putting out more books.
God.
And it's like, COVID had some lessons to teach all of us, that we do not need a lot of money to make a living, to make a meager living. Yeah.
So be it.
Well, we can.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting world we live in now. Or at least on BookTube, it's an interesting world.
It is.
Because
it is.
I mean, well, you're in the indie. Well, you said earlier that you had book recommendations for me. So.
Yeah, you've seen half of them now with Way of a Dan, and I know you're reading J.C.M. Burns' book and Janie Wertz. I put that on your list. Like you already said, somebody was suggesting Ken Follett, and I second that.
My friend Amanda loves Ken Follett. She's like, read
at least read Pillars of the Earth. In my opinion, the second book it's okay. If Pillars of the Earth is a 5-star, book 2 is probably a 3-star. He's trying to recapture what he did with book 1. Book 3 is a 4-star, so it's not as good as Pillars of the Earth, but he's kind of getting a good idea. And I haven't read the other 2, and I haven't read his World War II series, but his generational epic, his ability to write generational epic is just awesome. So like every one of the books takes place over like 70 years. And so it will span 3 full generations of events. And then his World War II one is world spanning. So he has a family he's following in Britain, in Germany, and in Russia over the course of pre-World War II through the end of the war. So his just ability to write a big fat book that just spans worlds or generations is really, really fun.
Yeah, no, one of my I admittedly haven't read I haven't read as much historical fiction as I would like to. So maybe I'll try Follett.
Were you starting Sharp's rifles?
Yes, I am going to start. I'm going to read Sharp's Tiger at least this year and see where it goes from there. But yes, I am going to be reading Sharp this year. Yeah,
there you go. And he wrote those because he said, I want to write a hornblower on the mainland. So he wrote, because Horatio Hornblower is very approachable versus Audrey and Matron by Master and Commander. Anyway, that author writes it much more technical, versus Hornblower is more of an adventure on the seas, and Sharps and Cornwell he's writing on land, kind of as an adventure on the land in the Iberian Peninsula. Well, Sharp's Tigers will be like the prequel to the main series over in India.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Ben from Genghis Khan. I'm like, so what's the order of all these books? And he tried to explain it to me, and I'm like, oh, God bless him.
Did he tell you how the movies changed the books?
Oh, you mean the one with Sean Bean?
Yeah.
He didn't. I don't think he had watched the show.
So a really great show, and Sean Bean is absolutely a great Sharp, and it was before Lord of the Rings, and
before he died a lot in movies.
Right. And so he wrote several of the Sharp's books, and they started making the movies. And the movies are like 90-minute masterpiece theater, like just a version of the book as a single episode, kind of like Sherlock. So after he did Sean Bean, after Sean Bean acted as Sharp, he then changed the description of Sharp in books after that to be Sean Bean. Because originally he's described as shorter, and Sean Bean's like 6'2", and blonde, and so he changed the description. He like spent a book not describing Sharp, and then a book later started describing Sharp literally as Sean Bean, and then from there on, that's what he looks like.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that Cornwell liked Sean Bean a lot as the role.
Yeah,
and I do like Sean Bean when he's not dying. He's a good actor.
He is.
Yeah, you've done but yeah, you also have done but yeah, I've been looking for because I did a video talking about stuff I want to do for 2024. I was hoping to read more indie books this year. I mean, I got a couple over here. I showed you earlier. Got Joe's book here.
Yep, that's a great start. Yep.
I got A Hot Dose of Hell from Steve Stark, who's I've become friendly with.
Yep.
I probably have a couple more over here. I don't want to pull them out at the moment though.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's but yeah, I've been aside from your books. I mean, I know you probably want to. I mean, aside from your books, do you have indie books you would recommend?
Yeah, well, I'd say based on your reading taste, Way of a Dan is going to be right up there for you.
Probably Michael Fletcher this year.
Read that.
I was gonna get it. I was hoping to get it for Christmas, but my parents were like, "We just saw it on we just saw it on Kindle." I'm like, okay. So I then search it up on Amazon. There's a paperback. I'm like,
yeah.
Where were you guys looking? But anyway, they're probably gonna hear him be.
I think that would be a really good way for you to enter.
I was just like, man,
those are great. Of course, I mean, we talked about it earlier today. So, but Tori's books are. Bloodstones are great.
I do want to read Phased because I love werewolves a lot. So
and Bloodstones is just such a good book.
Well, of course
I wouldn't have narrated it if I didn't already love it. It's one of those. I'm always astounded when she's in my writing group, and when she turns a chapter in for me to read, it's polished. Sure, it still had to have an editor look at it at the very end, but I don't notice the typos the way that editor friends of mine do. So, but when I'm reading it, I was like, it's polished. It's a story. There's some great prose.
I like the hook for the Bloodstones.
Yeah. It's just a really good book without being far grimdark. Even Philip Chase is not wildly grimdark. I know. I watched one interview with him where John Morrow put him halfway between super grimdark and not. So he's definitely got some grim to it, but it's not deep grimdark. But I think the fact that it's dark and the prose is, well, I mean, he speaks Welsh and teaches ancient texts. So he knows how to write high prose, and it's not purple.
That's good. That would just suck.
No, it's not purple at all.
No.
It's more Tolkien-esque, most certainly. There's times when you're gonna see Tolkien coming through, but it's not pastiche Tolkien. It's not pastiche.
That's good. There's one I've been hearing about, the Wiltshire. Wiltshire Witch, I think is what it's called. And people are like, "Oh, that's Dickensian," and my ears perk up. I'm like, "Oh, Dickensian."
Oh, the Wickwire Watch. Absolutely.
Yes, that's what it's called. Watch. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. The Wickwire Watch is it's basically Artful Dodger is the main character.
Oh yes, Oliver Twist is one of my favorite stories of all time. So
I still haven't watched it, but have you watched the new Artful Dodger show?
Not yet. No.
Yeah, it looks fun. I'm gonna try it out.
Though David, I think David Thewlis, I don't know, but I think he's an underrated actor. Loved him in Fargo season 3. He's so good. Another one.
And then the actor who played Lupin.
Yeah, he's also the actor who played Lupin. Yep.
Yeah. He plays Fagin. Yeah. It looks fun. It'll be a romp regardless.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So, yeah.
But yeah, that one looked. I liked. I've seen some reviews of some like The Adventures of Blackjack, or no, The Ballad of Blackjack is what I think it's called. And I'm like, that looks.
Legend of Blackjack by
The Legend of Blackjack. God, I'm so sad. I'm so bad with these names.
Yeah, right now. that one.
Usually good ratings.
I don't know. I don't know how many cartoons you watch, but have you watched like the new DuckTales or like the Ninja Turtles from 2012?
I did see parts of I saw the first season of the new
Okay.
DuckTales and I really liked it. David
Yeah,
Tennant as Scrooge McDuck
exactly.
is freaking awesome.
So the reason I bring that up is that like if you go back and watch the original DuckTales, it does not hold up. It's very weak and the writing's bad, but you can tell from the new DuckTales that it was people my age who said, I loved DuckTales. Let's make a new one. Went back and watched it and said, this is not good. Let's make it the way we felt it was. So they wrote a really true to story with taking the whole lore and making a new cartoon. Reason to bring that up is A.R. Witham's story feels like Goonies, Never Ending Story, and the Hook, the 1990s
Well,
and 80s feel of Little Orphan Annie or even Nemo Adventures in Wonderland, but a whole new story. So it has that feel that it doesn't matter whether you're 12, 20, 40, 60. If that was something that ever appealed to it's going to hit you in the nostalgia feels big time.
well, I mean that's I just thought the idea was interesting. Like this kid who is from our world just shoots into this fantasy
Yeah.
world, and he's like, okay. And then like he's like really smart apparently, and he's like
Yep.
very into science, and they're like, ooh, well you're a wizard, and he's like,
Yeah, so
no,
it's
this
kind
is
of a
just
kid in King
basic
Arthur's court.
physics.
Yeah, or like a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court.
Yeah, I'm like, that sounds really fun. I want to read
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I want to read that.
Yeah. That one's an easy read.
I just I don't know where to start. There's so many now. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, you've already got Wistful, and honestly, it's going to take you in real fast. His character work is automatic. You'll be just in and invested, and you only have to read a couple chapters at a time, and you'll probably read more than that. But if you're reading a couple
I read
chapters
60
at a
pages
time,
a day when I read. So.
yeah, you're going to tear into that, and it's going to be like going home to reading Invincible or, something by Bendis.
Oh, so I mean, like, so I was gonna ask, do you like comics? I mean, I see you have a
I
little,
do.
you have a little Riddler in background there.
I do.
You have a
Yeah, I
little,
got Riddler there, and Usagi Yojimbo is actually my favorite comic.
still haven't read that. It's one
That's
of
really
those
good.
that
I
still
almost
hurts.
got the whole collection in omnibus. I've got one more volume to buy.
It's like Ursula K. Le Guin or like Roger Zelazny and fantasy authors
Right.
with comics. Like one of those I've wanted to try for a long time. I'm just really sad I haven't yet.
Yeah. I've got 2 whole comic boxes out in the garage waiting for the kids to be old enough to read, and then I'm gonna have a whole bunch to give them. But my reading taste for comics has been all over the place over the years. Like some series which are completely bonkers compared to others, I'll still put up my top favorite series, like the original Young Justice from 97 to 2001, which had Tim Drake and Superboy and Impulse were the starters of that. Really cartoony, really loved it. But then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum would be Marvel Squadron Supreme Max, which was by Straczynski.
Oh yeah, that's his that's kind of his take on the Justice League, isn't it?
Yes, and it was around the same time as they were doing Ultimate Universe,
Yeah.
Spider-Man and stuff. So then they said, and they never really say it, but it's obvious that Squadron Supreme is the JLA, but they're all just it's very the boys.
I like it's interesting because I love Garth Ennis, but there's sometimes I do think he goes a bit too far, and
Right.
The Boys is one of those comics I like it. For
It went
instance,
pretty far.
I love me some Billy Butcher. He is one of
Right.
my favorite characters that Garth Ennis has made. But like even people who like it can't help but admit he did go a bit. To quote George Lucas, he went a little too far in some places.
So in the Marvel Max Squadron Supreme, the premise is in a real world, if Superman came to Earth, the first people to get to them would be the government. They'd see it coming. So they go to intercept, and they end up killing the couple that finds them with their farm truck. And they put him in a holding zone, like miles large holding zone, and then hire 2 agents to act as his parents to raise him the American way. Only they don't love him. They're paid agents. And so he's this child who all of a sudden has all these powers of Superman. and just wants to be loved because no one's ever loved him, which the Kents would have given Clark Kent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he just wants to be loved, and so he's unlike Homelander. He's very controllable. If you show him actual love, he's immediately loyal. So he's a loyal dog. So what do you do if you have a superhuman you can't kill? You have to figure out a way to kill him. And so they develop, like, from the baby pod, they find a crystal, and it basically creates a Green Lantern. And so the Green Lantern character is the anti-weapon. And then, of course, hijinks ensue. But it's a really great run. So that one's really, really high on my list. I really liked the Ultimate X-Men run. Was really great.
Oh, the Morrison one?
Yep. And then the original Civil War was, I really liked it. It got me enough.
Mark Millar, so
yeah, I mean, I appreciated that someone finally, he and Straczynski kind of made it so it wasn't a whole bunch of writers writing a whole bunch of things. Mm-hmm. Like it fixed the Wolverine problem of every team has Wolverine on it, and it's like, no, you can't do that. If this is going to be cohesive, can we not put Wolverine on every team? Yeah, but the artist won't draw if he's not in it. It's like, okay, I get it. But yeah, so I kind of read all over the place when it comes to comics.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's you know, I'm kind of the same way. I've read a lot, though. I grew up in I've grown up in the age where Image and Dark Horse blew up. Yep. So I like a lot of Image and Dark Horse comics.
Yeah. I read a lot of cliffhanger comics too.
At least with Image, Dark Horse kind of blew up before my time, but like Image blew up when I was growing up. Yep. So I read a lot of those.
Yeah.
Or at least when they had their resurgence, when they weren't just, ripping off Marvel and DC and just doing it like in the most dark and edgy way possible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big fan of like Saga and Deadly Class. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've also read a lot of Marvel and DC in my time because, I do love superheroes a lot.
Yeah, I just picked up for my son the old Batman animated series comics for him to read a few of those, because I grew up with the animated series.
I mean, I did too. I mean, I'm not a kid of the 90s, but like I grew up watching them because like it's so iconic, So,
it's so good. I mean, we wouldn't have Harley Quinn without it. We wouldn't have this version of the Riddler without it, and it just it's brilliant. It's so iconic.
It's probably my favorite Batman thing ever. Like
that's why I didn't finish the series, but I really enjoyed Gotham because it felt like it had its issues. But it was the first time we got to see Riddler as actually being Riddler, not being an angsty brat. And it's like, nope, he's crazy, and he's also a genius, but also he hates being outsmarted. And it was like, that's the Riddler we need.
I will say I really enjoyed what they did with Penguin. Yeah, I really liked what they did with Riddler.
Joker, that performance by
I had issues with what they did with the Joker, but
just that one episode.
I forget that kid's name. Cameron Monaghan, I think, is his name.
Yeah, he did the new Star Wars video game.
Yeah, he's incredible.
The way that he switched, it was like seeing Heath Ledger again.
Mm-hmm.
When he's in the box, being in that first episode with the Joker was just so. He captured 5 different Jokers at the same time, and it was like amazing, just for that scene alone. I mean, nobody beats Mark Hamill. But
no, yeah. I don't think anyone will beat Mark Hamill. Though I do have a soft spot for Heath Ledger.
Oh, absolutely. He deserved the award whether he died or not.
Yeah, I know. It's one.
But that was a very different interpretation.
One of those
than Mark Hamill.
It's one of those few performances where like he just completely just vanished.
Yep.
Like
like Dustin Hoffman in Hook.
Yeah.
Right? I still can't see Dustin Hoffman in there, no matter how many times I watch it. He's Hook.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, sometimes I'm one of those guys who thinks like Dustin Hoffman tries too hard, but like when he's good, he's exceptional. I have a soft spot for Rain Man personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you have some books as well.
I do. Yeah, I've got 2 series. My first thing that I published wasn't the first thing I wrote.
I'm poking you with the stick now.
There you So Thrice, it's a Slavic fantasy about a man and a boy on the road. Little boy has way too much magic, and the father, who was given the child as a baby, just wants to provide a normal life for him. And so they go on the road, and rather than running, they decide to go directly into the bear's cave and tell him just to stop hunting him, because everybody wants the kid's magic. So they go and ask them to just stop, and by whatever means necessary.
I've been kind of unsure what to read next. I might try Thrice then.
If you say you read 60,000 words, 60 pages, you said 60 pages a day or 600 pages a day?
60 pages a day.
You'll be done in 2 or 3 days. It's 350 pages.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, I think in page count. I don't think of like word count.
Yeah. So it's a 300 pages. Yeah, 300 pages.
And while I generally don't do, I mean, I'm not against ebooks. I like smelling my books.
So, and you'll like the pacing too. I wrote it with kind of a comic books pace feel to it, or a Netflix episode.
I really like the kid and child duo. So yeah, now I'm definitely going to pick it up. Damn
Absolutely.
You.
Yep. Yeah. And then my other series is the Collation Saga, and I've got 3 books out now.
It's more your epic one, huh?
It's my big fat epic. So it's multi-point of view, paramercenaries trying to make a living, a paladin who's being called directly by his god to become his champion while his order is collapsing around him, and then a physician who has a mysterious seed pod that is centuries old but hasn't aged, and she unlocks how to wake it up. And then, of course, there's a figure that's got a cloak made of bones that makes him invisible to the gods, and he wants to kill them all. And so it's Deathless Beast, Bone Shroud, and Gloves of Eons just came out a few months ago. That's book 3. And then I've got book 4 is done. I finished the first draft, and that'll probably be July, I think, is when it'll be released. And that'll be the end of the first arc. So it'll be a 4-book arc out of 2 arcs. So it'll be 8 books total.
So you're doing like an Amber. There's like 5, and there's 5. I haven't read Amber, but I've heard it's like that.
Yeah, 4 and 4, and there'll be a break between.
I should say First Law, because First Law kind of does that. There's 3 books, right, and then you can read the standalones, and then there's the
Yeah, so that's what I'm working on, and I've got a couple other projects. I'm going to finish the Needle and Leaf series, which is Thrice and Fourscored. I'll finish writing that.
How many books are going to be in
that? It'll be done by the end of this year. So I've got the book trilogy? I'm working on now. Trilogy 4. We'll see how it ends up panning out. Yeah.
But yeah.
So that'll just be 4 short ones. Whereas Collation is not just 8 books. There'll be other series in the same world. So it's gonna be pretty expansive.
Yeah. Also your wife's a writer too.
She is. She writes mystery. She's a historical mystery author. She's got stuff set in 1901.
That must be interesting for your kids. You must be a very literary family.
Unless yes, one of your kids and they're just starting to write now too.
Unless one of your kids is like an edgelord, it's like I don't wanna,
Yeah, they're writing too. They do writing for homeschooling, and they'll get the bug and spend a whole day just writing, and it's like I'm doing something right. Yeah.
Well, at least they're living, or
exactly
doing something.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's what's some of the other? Is that like what are some of the other figurines you got back there? Is that like Titanfall?
No, this is actually I just got these for Christmas. This is a Tau battlesuit, a Warhammer battlesuit, in action figure scale.
Oh,
so these are GI Joe 1/18th Tau and their battlesuits. They've got Space Marines and stuff out now. And
you like Warhammer?
I do, yeah.
I've heard so much of Warhammer, but I'm kind of terrified of the lore because it's so big.
Oh, it's huge, but it's not as big as people think it is. It's much more sandboxy. Okay. And whenever they write a series, so set aside the Horus Heresy trilogy series, which is the big fat one that they're releasing right now, which goes back 10,000 years and is kind of rewriting everything. Forget that. All the other books that they write, their philosophy of writing is that the galaxy is so big, nobody knows what else is happening around the galaxy. So it allows you to focus each story in a way that doesn't know anything else that's happening, so it can just tell its own story. So like you're reading Cornwell. If you really love Cornwell, but you want some sci-fi, you could read Gaunt's Ghosts, which is Cornwell in space, in the 40K universe. And it's just a group of soldiers whose planet was destroyed, and every single book, they go to a new theater of war, which is what Cornwell does too. Sharps rifles, each one is, but what if the Sharps had to do trench warfare? But what if Sharps had to do guerrilla warfare? But what if Sharps get stuck behind enemy lines? That's the premise of Sharp. Gaunt's Ghost does the same thing. What happens if you get dropped on a planet and you're a scout platoon and you're told, but you have to fight in trench warfare because that's the honorable way to fight? Like, but I don't want to. We're scouts. Doesn't matter. You're here now. You have to fight in a trench. So now they got to learn to not die while fighting in a trench. It's a really approachable series.
I've heard like Dan Abnett's a good place to start.
He wrote that.
Oh, he wrote that? Okay.
Yep. He wrote that, and so that's a really great series. And what you read one book at a time. And then he also wrote the Eisenhorn trilogy, which is the first trilogy of 3 trilogies. And that's a police investigation in space story, basically.
Oh, well, that sounds. Yeah. You know, I like noir a lot, so that'd be. I'll eat that up.
But that one's good too. And again, you don't have to know anything. It's very he writes in a way that you're going to be plopped right in, and you just get to enjoy the ride, and you don't need to know anything about 40K. I know things about 40K because I consumed it in college and high school. So I know all of this stuff. So when new information comes out, I just get to kind of plug it into the puzzle, and I just relearn it.
So there's like a supercomputer in your brain where you just.
I mean, aren't we all in high school and college, right? We absorb so much garbage.
I'm like that with Star Wars, so I
exactly.
I hear you.
Exactly. You know so much about the Star Wars lore that even if they pull things out and say this isn't canon anymore, you have a whole section of non-canon in your head.
Yeah,
but you also can plug in new stuff and say, "Oh, you're bringing Thrawn back? I know a lot about Thrawn."
Oh my god! The Thrawn books might be my favorite Star Wars thing aside from like the movies, and that's a whole rabbit hole I don't want to get into right now because I love Star Wars.
Yeah, but so you understand, it's the same sort of thing. Yes, there is a lot. You could go super deep in 40K. You could go really deep, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick and choose. There's so many books and so many series. You can be like, I like cyberpunk, so I'm going to read this thing and ignore all this other stuff. I prefer war. I want Titans. I want ship combat. You don't have to read anything else. You can just grab a thing you like and say your 40K. It's not like, you would never tell somebody you can't watch anime unless you watch it all. Like, no, you're gonna watch Demon Scroll, or someone says.
I mean, there's always the gatekeepers,
Right, and there always is, and it's like someone could say, "Well, I watch Blue Eyed Samurai. Does that mean I know anime?" It's like, yes, but no, but yes. Like, you've now learned a lot about. If you've never watched anime before and you watch Blue Eyed Samurai, you're gonna learn a lot about anime storytelling, even if it's not done in anime style. Same could be said of One Punch Man. You can never watch anime, but One Punch Man is going to teach you a ton about anime for you to then go into other animes.
Mm-hmm.
So gateways are great.
Yeah,
gatekeepers aren't.
I'm more of a. I'm like I like the more like. I'm gonna say this and then I'll watch an anime that'll just not be that and I'll just lap it up. But like I like the more like grounded anime. Like I'm a big like Cowboy Bebop fan. Even though Cowboy Bebop does have its over the top moments, though.
Sure.
So I mean, it's it's kind of par for the course. But have you ever had one of those things that just felt made for you?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's Cowboy Bebop for me. Like it has all the stuff I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Just crammed into one.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's always fun to find that
sort of thing. I got my fallbacks that we're always rewatching. Firefly at least once a year. Lord of the Rings is an easy fallback to watch the movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be if I'm in a bad place, give me a couple weeks to just watch the Lord of the Rings and all the appendices, and I'll be a happy camper. But that's just like I don't have to rewatch those over and over and over again. I like new as well. And so it's fun to find the new that I didn't know existed.
So I'm curious what you thought of Ring of Power or Rings of Power.
I haven't watched it.
Oh, you haven't watched it?
No.
I watched
I suffered through Wheel of Time season 1.
I just got through an episode. I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I
The
don't.
music doesn't stand out to me as well, too. Like, I mean, Bear McCreary is great. Bear McCreary is
Oh yeah, he's
fantastic.
fantastic.
But I've heard the soundtrack to Wings of Power, and it doesn't stand out. Not in the way Battlestar Galactica does, right? Battlestar Galactica has such a specific music to it, the way that Lord of the Rings did, right? Lord of the Rings is so par excellence. Like, I don't know a better soundtrack. And it just didn't quite do it for me like that.
Star Wars.
Oh, here's something that really hit me, and I always keep coming back to it. Like the last 3 years, have you played Banner Saga?
No. What is this?
Oh man. So if you have Steam, you can get it on Steam.
Oh.
It was released through Kickstarter over 3 years of 3 different parts of the story. And it's a Norse inspired, Ragnarok inspired story.
I love Norse myth, so this sounds right up my alley.
It's an Oregon Trail story. So you're escaping the fact that one day the sun just stops and now it's day all the time. That's the first story. And so you're just trying to, and there's these new creatures that show up, which are basically made of armor and talk in resonance. And you're just running from them.
What do you mean?
Like, they don't speak in words, they speak in song.
Oh.
And they have like resonance powers. Oh. And so you're humans, and then these giants that were created and have never been created again. So they can't have children, and they have big old horns coming out of their heads. And it's a very dark Norse story with the most beautiful art and music you can imagine. So I can't think of the artist's name, but it was the artist who inspired Tchaikovsky and
you mean the composer?
No, the art of Sleeping Beauty, the movie, the background.
Mm-hmm.
So that background was an emulation of a particular Russian artist, and that's the art they use for Banner Saga. And the music for Banner Saga is some of the most beautiful, haunting Norse-inspired music you will ever
I'll have to
hear.
Check this out. Like,
you're gonna immerse so hard into that story.
I'm gonna have to check. There's this one game I play that's also Norse inspired, Hellblade.
Okay.
Play that with your headphones on. It is an experience. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah.
I haven't finished it yet, but I've loved it so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Yeah, you're gonna love that game. Like I said, there's 3 acts. There's three games you'll purchase, and each part of the story. They improve the gameplay in the second one, but it doesn't detract. It isn't like one was bad.
I also have Disco Elysium I want to try soon. I've heard some people say that's really good. I've tried playing games like Planescape Torment, which are like old RPGs. I can't, but for some reason I keep getting stuck, and I just get frustrated and I put them down.
Yeah. This one you won't. You'll just keep moving forward because it is a story in the end. It's almost more story than game. But instead of hunting like an Oregon Trail, it stops and does a turn-based battle system.
Oh.
Yeah.
So is it like isotropic, like a RPG game, or is it like what kind of?
3-dimensional tabletop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I highly suggest that. Not enough people are playing that.
I'll have to look that up after we're done here. But I mean, I guess I'll talk about this one last thing and then we'll get going because I've held you on for long enough. And thank you for your patience with me, by the way, with my my new stuff I'm doing here. But
it's good to have a new mic.
Yeah, exactly. But like, so what audibles have you done? Like audiobooks? I mean, Audible's the site.
I recorded Troy Knowlton's Seeker's Winds of Change and Naomi Cohen's The Fae of Castle Garden, which was actually a big surprise. Except for like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, I don't read a lot of Fae fiction. So this one takes place in turn of the century New York City as immigrants from Ireland, including the Fae, have shown up and are trying to make a life in like Central Park. I had a really fun time recording that. And then I'm just finishing up Tori Tekken's Bloodstones. Mm-hmm. And then past that, I've recorded all of my own books and I've mastered all of my wife's books. So in this last year alone, about 9 books in total.
You've been busy.
Yeah,
boy.
Very busy. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
I have to I have to talk to your wife at some point, though.
Yeah,
I don't know if our literature taste would align. I'm not a huge like Agatha Christie fan, but
hmm
you never know.
you never know.
But aside from that, well, I think I've held you on for long enough. Thank you so much for coming on
Thanks for
here.
having me on.
And thanks for being my first guest of 2024 as we
Yeah,
speak.
here's 2024.
Yeah, yeah. um, if you want to shill anything real quick before we get moving, feel free.
You can find my books
Be
everywhere
shameless,
books are
sir.
sold, whether it's ebook, audiobook, print, it's all available. If you prefer Spotify, you can listen to audiobooks on Spotify. Um, yeah, my books are everywhere. You look for them, you'll find them. Andrew D. Meredith. And you can buy them off my website too. I've got a couple short stories that are for sale on there too. So that's andrewdmeredith.com. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know where you can find me. I'm on Twitter. You can find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than, well, I didn't review, but, one you just heard right now. And you can find me on Discord. You're also on Discord as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, no. Thank you for coming on here, man.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your January.
All right. Well, take care, everyone. Until next time.
See you later.
I'll have to do this again.